Hello, Luminary Lore Circle. Welcome back to another captivating story. Today, we delve into a tale of secrets and revelations that will keep you on the edge of your seat. I met a girl at college. From that moment on, we've been inseparable. 3 years into our relationship, we decided to share a roof. We lived together for another 3 years and then decided to tie the knot. Then, a couple years later, my wife got pregnant and we welcomed our daughter into the world. That's how we lived our lives. Of course, we had the usual domestic disputes, but those were inevitable. We always found a common ground, both during a fight and after. In essence, we were just an ordinary family. After college, I entered the workforce and gradually built my career. Eventually, I earned enough to buy an apartment. We renovated it and moved in. After her maternity leave, my wife also started working and achieved impressive results. Her earnings combined with mine allowed us to save a decent amount of money over time. We had everything we needed. We even bought a future apartment for our daughter. Overall, we had everything we could have wanted. I loved my wife and never cheated on her. She worked in international business, meaning her colleagues often visited. I started noticing her spending longer hours with them, but I didn't think much of it. Before bed, I noticed she was receiving messages on her messenger apps. However, when she was abroad, the messages would stop a few times while she slept. I checked her phone, but all messages were deleted. I specifically remember, for instance, her phone buzzing at 11 p.m. after she fell asleep. I checked her phone and saw no messages after 7 p.m. in any of her chats. And so the moment arrived when the seeds of suspicion took root in my mind. One evening, she came home late, around 10. I lightly teased her, asking if she had been seeing a lover. I saw a look of fear in her eyes, a look I'd never seen before. She simply smiled back at me, averting her gaze, and said I was being foolish. Periodically, she flew overseas to meet with her colleagues. Hence, prompted by a growing suspicion that I couldn't shake off, I installed a spy app on her phone. This allowed me to control her phone for my personal online account. I could record ambient sounds, take photographs, and send all this to my personal account. On one of her business trips, I commanded the app to record her surroundings for 10 minutes. After a 30-minute agonizing wait, a recording appeared in my personal account. As I listened, I realized she was in a room with a man. They were speaking in German, but I understood it all. They were discussing mundane affairs, their last echoing in the solitude. It was apparent they were alone in the room. Then I heard the unmistakable clink of glassware. My heart pounded harder. I requested another 20 minutes of recording and had the thought to take a picture from the front camera. When the image appeared on my screen, I spotted the room number and a part of the bed evident in the pit of my stomach. I felt a heavy knot of dread. 15 minutes later, a new recording came in, and I felt physically ill. I hit play, and again I heard the exchange of words and laughter between my wife and this man. It felt as though I was trapped in an incomprehensible state where it seemed the world around me was collapsing. At that moment, I poured myself a glass and programmed the app to record for another 4 hours. I sat back, took a heavy swing of the drink, the twinge of its harshness barely registering as time continued its merciless march. Then I drank heavily. In the morning, my daughter woke me ready for school. I told her she could skip today, and I informed my workplace that I would be taking a few days off. My wife was due to return home on Sunday, and I sat down to listen to the 4-hour-long recording. But all that took me was a gut-wrenching 40 minutes. It was at that moment I heard the moans of the woman I had shared more than 13 years of my life with. And I knew all too well what those moans signified. At that moment, pain pierced through me as if a knife was thrust into my heart. It felt as though I was experiencing physical pain. I sprinted to the bathroom where I violently cast up. I didn't know what caused more suffering, the hangover or the situation. I stood in the cold shower for 20 minutes. Then I took our daughter to my folks, promising I'd explain everything later, and returned home. She called me at noon and asked affectionately, "How are you doing, darling?" I stayed silent, holding the cell phone to my ear, unable to utter a single word. After she repeated the question, I somehow composed myself and replied that I was fine. Blaming the bad connection, I told her I was feeling under the weather and intended to spend a few days at home. That day was the hardest for me. I was witnessing hell, clueless about what to do or where to hide. The noise in my head was so deafening that I couldn't hear my thoughts. I sat on the couch and wept. Then rage engulfed me, eventually followed by lethargic apathy. The more emotions I spilled, the lighter I felt. I could feel every bit of affection I had nurtured for her throughout these years slowly dying within me. By the end of the day, I was near emotionally dead. By day's end, I was almost emotionally numb. In the evening, I logged into my account once more and began sending commands to her phone. I started receiving images from her bag and her table. Sound recordings arrived, indicating she was at some restaurant with a lot of people around. Apparently, they truly were her colleagues. But then the chilling evening ritual started. The foam on the bedside table again, their voices, only this time minus the moaning. I couldn't stand it anymore and dialed her fairway number. She picked up on the fourth ring. I could hear her breathing heavily. I asked her what's happening. Why is she panting so hard? She replied that the hotel's elevator was out of order and she was climbing the stairs to her room. We talked for only a minute. It was excruciatingly hard. I had to maintain my cool, ensure my voice didn't betray me. I told her I was off to sleep, wished her sweet dreams, and hung up. Then I sent a command. Take a series of photos using the front camera. This time, she made a blunder. Following our conversation, instead of the bedside table, she placed her foam on the bed. The front camera began sending a couple of skewed but comprehensible photos. A top view of half of her naked body in a straddle position over another body. After that, I received an audio recording relaying sounds all too familiar to me, sounds that left no doubt about her activities. It was the last straw. I saved those recordings and materials, even though at that moment she had already become a complete stranger to me. Until Sunday, I didn't attempt to figure anything else out. Everything was clear and I started contemplating my next move. Divorce, scandal, how it would affect our daughter. After all, she was only 9 years old, and the harsh reality of her mother's infidelity was a whirlwind I was unsure of how to navigate. On Sunday, closer to late evening, she returned home and reached out to embrace me, but I turned away. I told her I was sick, though a part of me wanted to let my hand fly across her face. I sought refuge on the sofa in my study that night. The next morning, I woke earlier than her, unable or unwilling to be by her side, and hurriedly rushed to work. I spent my entire day in the office working like a zombie. Then I gathered all the recordings and photos onto a flash drive. I added a video message addressed to her, which I had recorded in a conference room at the office on my phone. The message was peppered with questions. Why? What were you thinking? Was I such a dreadful husband all these years that you simply decided to flush me down the drain? All the generic sentiments that well up when one is faced with such a situation. I then approached my boss requesting an urgent week off without revealing the true reason. I informed my wife I had to leave on an unexpected business trip for a day. I asked her to let our daughter stay one more day with her grandmother. I had a surprise for her, but would only return by the evening to quickly pack my bag. When I got home, my wife was already gathering my clothes for my trip. The picture of sweet innocence. But on seeing this charade, rage erupted within me. I snatched my bag, tossed the flash drive on our bedroom bedside table, and ignoring her puzzled look, marched out the house, and took a taxi to our second act, a property we had purchased for our daughter's future. It was unoccupied at the moment. From there, I rang a friend asking if he'd be up for a spontaneous few days away. He agrees. And we booked tickets for a late-night flight to Florida. It was while soaking up the Floridian sun that I poured out my entire story to him. We walked, relaxed, and, of course, spent time flirting with women. Truthfully, I no longer felt bound by any obligations towards my wife. I didn't answer my wife's calls, just sent her a message informing her to insert the flash drive that was on the bedside table in the bedroom into her laptop. Half an hour later, my phone was ablaze with missed calls and messages. I didn't bother to read them. I just didn't care. I simply powered down my phone. We ended up roaming around Miami for 3 more days, and on Saturday I flew back home. Upon landing, I switched my phone on and at home for a good 5 minutes, struggling to process all the messages she had sent me. I didn't open them. I didn't want to agitate myself before stepping into our apartment. The apartment was eerily quiet when I entered. I placed my luggage, silently undressed, and went to Washington. My hands. That's when she emerged from the bedroom. I had never seen her so disheveled and swollen-eyed, her face streaked with tears. She fell to her knees, stuttering, an explanation through her sobs and sniffles. I showed no emotions and asked in a calm tone, "What are we going to do?" She pleaded for forgiveness, sobbing anew, confessing that she got too carried away, admitted that she didn't understand how things had escalated so horribly. She called herself a monster, but you know what? I felt nothing for her. No pity, no anger. She wailed, professing that she loved only me, always had, and everything happened due to her insatiable greed. She shared how during my absence, she realized the mess she had gotten herself into. But as the saying goes, revenge is a dish served cold. I told her we were no longer husband and wife. We would merely act as parents to our daughter, putting up a facade of amity. But I would live my life, and she could live hers. She was only my partner in raising our child. Perhaps someday I might change my mind, but for now, the thought of any intimacy with her revolts me. By the way, I told her where I'd been and what I'd been up to. She said she understood and was prepared to endure whatever it takes. Thus we coexist in the same apartment. Although quite honestly, I've already bought another one and put it under my father's name to avert any disputes in case of property division. I mostly sleep in my study, although sometimes to maintain appearances, I retire to our bedroom so our daughter can see us sleeping together. She tried to snuggle a few times when we shared the bed, but I was quick to end it. We've been devoid of any intimacy for 6 months now. I haven't confided in my parents, with only my father in the know about this situation. We've agreed to go on a week-long family vacation every year, but now we'll be sleeping in separate beds. I hang out with friends, and I bought myself a motorcycle again. I've quit smoking, joined a gym, and have shed 10 kilos. My physique is better, and there's the faint outline of abs. Sometimes I think she might walk up to me one day and declare she's had enough, and she's leaving. Or perhaps she would file for divorce, and we'd split our assets. But she hasn't, and I constantly catch her glances. You know, like the puss in Shrek. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Even though I see her efforts, I derive a perverse satisfaction from her misery. Recently, I deliberately left a pack of condoms on my study table, wanting to witness her reaction. When she entered the room and saw the condoms on the table, she fled from the room. She probably broke down crying, but I didn't restrain her. She still goes to work, but no longer stays late. Not that I keep a strict watch over her anymore. One day, she came up to me attempting to explain that she had cut off her relationship with the guy, though they still work together. They would communicate for work, via emails or in meetings, but she swore she stayed away from him. He has a family too, by the way. And I told her that who she carries on sexual relationships with wasn't my concern. She could do as she pleased. She didn't need to update me about whether she spread her legs today or not. Now, I sometimes come home late or leave after our daughter has fallen asleep, like from Friday to Saturday. Naturally, I don't restrict myself in any way. If I desire sex, it will happen. I come home late at night, retreating to my study or bedroom if she's already turned in. Everything else in our daily home routine remains unchanged. I still buy the groceries and cook, and the domestic help continues to clean, so nothing has really changed. I continue to pay for the apartment, and I do not concern myself with how she spends her money or if she does at all. Our conversations are solely focused on matters concerning our daughter, or when her parents come to visit. Although I have this feeling that if I were to bare the entire truth to her mother, she might strangle her right before my eyes, I enjoy a very cordial relationship with her mother, an intelligent woman who holds family values in exceedingly high regard. Perhaps this is another reason why my wife doesn't want to leave. Maybe she is afraid of her mother. Because the inevitable question would be, just what in the world is going on here? And I won't lie. The only thing I now do is to send her off with personal requests, justified by saying that she needs to find a lover from the same country and city. I taunt her as much as I can, and I take pleasure in it. Yes, perhaps I have now become a monster, but it's a monster she bred herself. You know what astounds me? Her resolve and her patience. To me, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Intriguing. I'm curious about how much more she can take. And let's not even start on the argument that she is the mother of my child. When she got involved with this man, she didn't seem too bothered by this fact. For 6 months, she was constantly traveling, engaging in intimate affairs without as much as a thought about her child or her husband. This is how I live now. Everything is fine with our daughter. We are great parents for her. I still help her with her evening assignments. Our mutual friends are none the wiser. Perhaps when I tire of tormenting her or decide enough is enough, I will switch off the scoundrel mode and sit to have a serious conversation with her. But not now, not right now. Such is life story. Share your thoughts in the comments about this situation and the behavior of the spouses. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more gripping tales. Share your thoughts in the comments below about the choices our characters made.